There is a reason some women feel naturally magnetic without trying. Not louder, not more beautiful, not more dominant, just grounded, present, centered. And there is also a reason many intelligent, capable women feel emotionally exhausted trying to be confident, yet still feel unseen, anxious, or disconnected. What most people call charisma is not a personality trait. It is not something you force. It is not something you learn by copying others. Charisma is what happens when your inner emotional system and your outer expression finally align. And today we're going to talk about the psychological patterns that explain why this alignment feels easy for some women and painfully confusing for others. These patterns are known as feminine archetypes, not as labels, not as boxes, not as roles you must perform, but as emotional regulation styles that shape how your nervous system seeks safety, connection, power, and meaning. If you've ever thought, why do I feel confident in some environments and insecure in others? Why do I lose myself in relationships? Why does being strong feel unnatural or exhausting? You're not alone. This channel was created for women asking these exact questions. Here, we focus on emotional clarity, nervous system regulation, and relationships that don't require self-abandonment. If that resonates with you, you're welcome to subscribe and explore more conversations like this. Now, here's something most women are never taught. The reason you feel confident in some spaces and insecure in others has very little to do with confidence itself. It has to do with how your nervous system is wired to express feminine energy. And that's where feminine archetypes come in. What archetypes really are, psychologically speaking. In psychology, archetypes are recurring patterns of emotional orientation. They describe how a person relates to the world, not who they are. From a neurological perspective, archetypes shape how we regulate stress, how we experience safety, how we approach intimacy, how we express authority, and how we respond to uncertainty in everyday life. Most emotional confusion doesn't come from low self-esteem. It comes from living in a pattern that doesn't match your nervous system. You might resonate with more than one archetype, but usually, one or two feel deeply familiar, not exciting but settling. That sense of relief is important. It means your system recognizes itself. As you listen, don't analyze. Notice what calms you. Archetype 1, the maiden, emotional openness and possibility. The maiden's core energy is openness. She moves through life with a natural sense of possibility. Psychologically, she regulates her emotions through hope, curiosity, and lightness. Her nervous system feels safest when the future feels open, when things feel promising, when there is something to look forward to. For the maiden, emotional safety doesn't come from control or certainty. It comes from believing that things can work out. She approaches the world with trust, not because she is unaware of risk, but because her system is oriented toward potential rather than threat. This is why her presence often feels refreshing. Her charisma emerges from emotional warmth, from genuine enthusiasm, from a way of engaging with life that feels alive, optimistic, and inviting. People often feel uplifted around the maiden, not because she tries to motivate them, but because her energy reminds them of what's possible. In relationships, she tends to see the best in others first. In new environments, she adapts quickly. She brings softness, curiosity, and an open heart. But this same openness can become destabilizing when it lacks containment. When the maiden is unbalanced, her nervous system mistakes hope for safety. She may ignore red flags because acknowledging them feels like losing the future she imagined. She may people-please to preserve connection, even when her needs are not met. She may avoid responsibility or difficult decisions in the name of staying positive. And when reality inevitably fails to match her hopes, she feels deeply disappointed, sometimes confused about why things suddenly went wrong. Neurologically, this happens when optimism overrides discernment. Her brain is oriented toward reward and possibility, but her prefrontal regulation, the part that evaluates risk and sets limits, is underused. This doesn't mean the maiden is naive. It means her system prioritizes emotional expansion over emotional protection. And that is not a flaw. The maiden does not need to become harder, colder, or more guarded. She does not need to lose her softness. What she needs is structure. Structure is not the opposite of openness. It is what allows openness to exist without becoming self-abandonment. When the maiden learns to pair her hope with boundaries, something powerful happens. Her warmth no longer makes her vulnerable to being drained. Her optimism no longer exposes her to repeated disappointment. Instead, her presence becomes grounded. She learns that she can stay open and discerning, that she can be kind without overgiving, that she can believe in possibilities without sacrificing herself to them. This is when the maiden's charisma matures. She no longer radiates fragility. She radiates trust, first in herself and then in life. And that kind of presence feels safe, not just inspiring. Take this as a short internal exercise. Without trying to change anything, notice this. Am I choosing hope, or am I abandoning myself in the name of optimism? Archetype 2. The lover, emotional depth and sensory presence. The lover's core energy is connection. Her nervous system is deeply responsive to emotional and sensory input. She experiences life through feeling, through tone, texture, closeness, and emotional depth. She feels most alive when there is intimacy, beauty, passion, and emotional resonance. For the lover, safety doesn't come from distance or control. It comes from depth. This is why her presence is often described as magnetic. Her charisma is not loud or performative. It is felt rather than seen. She doesn't demand attention, she holds it. Psychologically, the lover has a high level of emotional intelligence. She reads subtle shifts in tone. She senses timing intuitively. She notices what is unsaid as much as what is spoken. People often feel deeply understood around her. Seen. Felt. But without regulation, this same depth can become overwhelming. When the lover is unbalanced, her nervous system begins to equate intensity with connection. She may chase emotional highs because calm feels empty. She may attach quickly, mistaking emotional closeness for safety. She may fear emotional distance, interpreting it as rejection. And she may confuse desire, chemistry, or longing with true emotional availability. Neurologically, this happens when emotional arousal overrides containment. Her system is highly activated, but not grounded. Without pauses, her sensitivity turns into urgency. This is not because she loves too much. It's because her nervous system hasn't learned to slow down without feeling disconnected. The lover does not need to suppress her passion. She does not need to become colder or less expressive. What she needs is pace. When the lover learns to slow down, her magnetism becomes stable instead of volatile. Her depth becomes inviting instead of overwhelming. Her presence becomes safe rather than consuming. Regulation does not dull her passion. It protects it. She learns that true intimacy grows over time. That emotional safety is built, not rushed. That connection doesn't disappear when there is space. And when she integrates this, her charisma becomes profound. People don't feel pulled or pressured around her. They feel drawn. This is a moment of self-observation. As you think about your connections, gently ask yourself, is this connection grounded? Or is it only stimulating? Archetype 3. The huntress, direction and self-trust. The huntress's core energy is movement. Psychologically, she regulates her emotions through action, purpose, and autonomy. Her nervous system feels safest when she is moving forward, when there is a direction, a goal, or a clear sense of progress. For the huntress, stagnation is unsettling. Uncertainty without agency feels threatening. She calms herself by deciding, acting, and taking responsibility for her own path. This is why her charisma comes from self-trust. She doesn't wait for permission. She doesn't need constant reassurance. She decides and moves. Her presence often feels strong, composed, and self-directed. People sense that she knows where she's going, even when the path isn't fully defined. Psychologically, the huntress is internally motivated. She doesn't rely heavily on external validation to move forward. She sets goals, commits to them, and adapts when necessary. But this same strength can become rigid when emotional integration is missing. When the huntress is unbalanced, her nervous system equates vulnerability with loss of control. She may suppress emotional needs because they feel inefficient or distracting. She may avoid softness, intimacy, or emotional dependence out of fear that it will slow her down. She may equate rest with weakness, constantly pushing herself forward. And over time, she may isolate, Not because she doesn't want connection, but because independence feels safer than reliance. Neurologically, this happens when the system is locked in a state of constant activation. Action becomes regulation. Stillness feels unsafe. This is not because the huntress is emotionally unavailable. It's because she learned that moving forward was the way to survive. Her challenge is not strength. It's integration. When the huntress allows emotional connection without losing direction, something shifts. She realizes that closeness doesn't erase autonomy, that softness doesn't cancel competence, that rest doesn't undo progress. When she integrates emotional presence into her forward movement, her charisma deepens. She no longer feels driven. She feels grounded. People are not just impressed by her, they feel safe with her. Her leadership becomes warmer. Her confidence becomes more embodied. Her presence becomes deeply attractive, not because she is untouchable, but because she is whole. The huntress does not lose power by allowing softness. She gains endurance. Consider this a simple mental check. Notice what comes up when you ask, where am I avoiding softness? Out of fear of losing control. Archetype 4, the Queen, authority and emotional stability. The Queen's core energy is sovereignty. Psychologically, her nervous system regulates through order, self-respect, and emotional hierarchy. She feels calm when she knows where she stands, internally and relationally. Clarity is safety for her. For the Queen, emotional stability comes from structure, from knowing her values, from understanding her role, her limits, and her standards. This is why her charisma comes from certainty. She doesn't need to dominate a room. She doesn't need to prove herself. People feel oriented around her because she is internally organized. Her presence communicates. I know who I am, and I know what I tolerate. That clarity is deeply regulating for others. Psychologically, the Queen tends to think in terms of long-term vision. She is strategic. She understands consequence, positioning, and responsibility. She often carries herself with composure, intention, and emotional containment. Her authority is not loud, it is stable. But when her sense of worth becomes dependent on external validation, this stability begins to crack. When the Queen is unbalanced, her nervous system seeks safety through control rather than self-trust. She may over-control situations or people in an attempt to maintain order. She may remain loyal to unhealthy dynamics because leaving feels like losing status, identity, or position. And she may confuse external markers, recognition, admiration, power, or approval with true emotional security. Neurologically, this happens when regulation shifts outward. Instead of grounding herself internally, she relies on the environment to confirm her value. This is when the Queen begins to feel anxious beneath her composure. True Queen energy does not come from being admired. It comes from internal authority. When the Queen leads herself first, when her choices align with her values rather than her image, her nervous system settles. She no longer needs to manage how she is perceived. She doesn't need to hold everything together through force. Her confidence becomes quieter. Her presence becomes steadier. And paradoxically, this is when others naturally follow her. Not because she demands it, but because her internal coherence creates trust. The Queen does not lose power when she releases external approval. She refines it. Her sovereignty becomes embodied, not performative, and her charisma becomes enduring rather than conditional. Take this as a moment of honest self-leadership. Without justifying your answer, ask yourself, am I choosing this because it aligns with my values, or because I need validation? Archetype 5, the Sage, clarity and perspective. The Sage's core energy is understanding. Psychologically, she regulates through meaning, insight, and cognitive clarity. Her nervous system calms when things make sense, when she can see patterns, connections, and underlying logic. For the Sage, confusion is destabilizing. Ambiguity feels unsafe. Clarity feels grounding. This is why her charisma is quiet but compelling. She doesn't command attention through intensity or emotion. She draws people in through perspective. The Sage often sees what others overlook. She notices inconsistencies, subtle dynamics, long-term consequences. She connects dots that feel invisible to those around her. People often seek her out for advice, even if she doesn't position herself as an authority. Her presence feels steady, thoughtful, and mature. Psychologically, the sage tends to rely on the mind as her primary regulator. Thinking creates distance from overwhelm. Understanding creates a sense of control. But when she becomes over-identified with the intellect, this strength turns into imbalance. When the sage is unbalanced, her nervous system retreats upward into analysis. She may overthink situations until action feels impossible. She may emotionally detach, using logic to avoid discomfort. She may delay decisions because she's waiting for perfect clarity. And she may intellectualize feelings instead of allowing herself to experience them. Neurologically, this happens when cognitive processing replaces emotional processing. Thinking becomes a shield. Analysis becomes a way to stay safe. This is not because the sage lacks emotional depth. It's because feeling without understanding once felt overwhelming. The sage does not need to think less. She needs to embody more. When she allows herself to experience life, to feel emotion in the body, not just label it, her wisdom deepens. She learns that clarity doesn't always come before action. Sometimes it emerges through movement, through contact, through presence. When the sage integrates embodiment, her charisma shifts. She becomes warmer, more relatable, more alive. Her insight no longer feels distant or abstract. It becomes lived. Wisdom, in its most powerful form, is not just knowing. It is integration. And when the sage allows herself to feel as much as she understands, her presence becomes magnetic in a deeply human way. This is an internal awareness exercise. Simply notice the pattern as you ask, what am I thinking about? Instead of allowing myself to feel. Archetype 6, the mother, stability and emotional safety. The mother's core energy is containment. Psychologically, she regulates through care, routine, and emotional presence. Her nervous system feels safest when there is continuity, predictability, and emotional steadiness. She brings a sense of holding. Others often feel calmer around her without knowing exactly why. Her presence slows the room down. She absorbs chaos and turns it into something manageable. This is why her charisma is grounding. She doesn't attract attention through intensity or authority. She attracts trust. People feel safe around the mother because her emotional signals are consistent. She listens. She remembers. She notices needs before they are spoken. For many women, this archetype develops early, often in response to environments where someone needed to be the stable one. Psychologically, the mother learns that care creates connection, that holding others together keeps relationships intact, that being reliable makes her indispensable. But when this archetype is unbalanced, care turns into self-erasure. When the mother is unregulated, her nervous system equates worth with usefulness. She may neglect her own needs because attending to others feels more urgent. She may overfunction emotionally, carrying responsibilities that are not hers. She may feel guilty resting, receiving, or saying no. And slowly, she may begin to feel depleted, resentful, or invisible without fully understanding why. Neurologically, this happens when caregiving becomes a survival strategy. Her system stays externally oriented, constantly scanning for what others need. There is little space left for her own internal signals. This does not mean the mother is weak. It means her capacity to hold has exceeded her capacity to be held. The mother does not need to care less. She needs reciprocity. Her power grows when she includes herself in her own care, when she learns that boundaries are not rejection, but preservation. That rest is not neglect, but repair. That receiving does not diminish her generosity, it sustains it. Nurturance without boundaries becomes depletion. But nurturance with self-inclusion becomes strength. When the mother integrates this, her presence changes. She no longer feels drained by giving. Her care becomes intentional rather than automatic. And her grounding energy becomes restorative, for herself as much as for others. This is mature mother energy. Stable, warm, self-respecting, and deeply powerful. Take this as a brief self-check. Gently observe, am I offering myself the same care I so naturally give to others? Archetype 7, the mystic, inner alignment and stillness. The mystic's core energy is meaning. Psychologically, she regulates through reflection, intuition, and inner coherence. Her nervous system finds safety not in action or stimulation, but in stillness. Silence calms her. Solitude restores her. For the mystic, emotional regulation happens inward. She listens before she speaks. She senses before she decides. She often understands things without being able to immediately explain how. This is why her charisma is subtle. She doesn't chase attention. She doesn't try to impress. She radiates presence simply by being deeply aligned with herself. People often feel something around the mystic before they can name it. A sense of depth, of calm, of quiet knowing. Her presence invites reflection in others. Psychologically, the mystic is oriented toward meaning rather than achievement. She seeks coherence instead of recognition. She is less interested in appearances and more interested in truth. But when this archetype becomes unbalanced, the mystic can drift too far inward. When disconnected from the external world, her nervous system begins to associate safety with withdrawal. She may retreat excessively, avoiding engagement even when it would be nourishing. She may feel misunderstood, not because others reject her, but because she hasn't translated her inner world outward. She may avoid practical action, waiting for perfect alignment before moving forward. Neurologically, this happens when introspection replaces interaction. Inner clarity becomes a refuge, but also a hiding place. This is not because the mystic lacks strength. It's because her inner world feels safer than the unpredictability of external reality. The mystic does not need to abandon her depth. She needs grounding. When she learns to bring her insight into daily life, through small actions, gentle structure, and embodied presence, her power expands. She realizes that alignment is not something she waits for. It is something she practices. When inner clarity meets real-world engagement, the mystic becomes deeply influential. Her words carry weight. Her silence carries meaning. Her presence feels anchoring rather than distant. She doesn't lose her mystery by becoming visible. She gives it form. And this is where the mystic's true power lives, in the bridge between inner knowing and lived reality. This is a quiet integration exercise. Without rushing to answer, ask yourself, how can this inner clarity find a place in my daily life? Why charisma emerges when you stop performing. Most women don't lack confidence. What they lack is alignment. They are not broken. They are not insecure by nature. They are simply performing an archetype that doesn't match how their nervous system is wired. And performance is exhausting. From a psychological perspective, performance creates internal inconsistency. Your body is signaling one thing, while your behavior is trying to communicate another. Your nervous system feels this mismatch immediately. This is why you might feel confident in one environment and strangely unsure in another. Why you feel calm with some people and tense with others. Why being strong sometimes feels empowering and other times feels deeply draining. Charisma does not come from effort. It comes from coherence. Charisma appears when performance ends. When you stop trying to be softer than you are. When you stop forcing strength that isn't natural to you. When you stop mimicking confidence instead of embodying it. Neurologically, this matters more than most people realize. The human nervous system is constantly scanning for consistency. When your emotional signals, tone, posture, timing, expression, are aligned, people feel safe around you. They may not know why, but they feel it. And safety is attractive. Not the loud kind. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind that makes people relax in your presence. This is why charisma cannot be faked for long. Your system eventually reveals the truth. When you are aligned with your natural archetypal pattern, your signals become clean. Your reactions make sense. Your boundaries feel natural instead of forced. Your presence feels settled. You no longer need to monitor yourself constantly. You no longer need to ask, am I doing this right? Because your body already knows. This is what it means to return to yourself. Not to become someone new. Not to improve your personality. But to stop overriding your natural regulation style. When you return to yourself, your energy stabilizes. Your emotions become easier to manage. Your relationships become clearer. And people respond differently, not because you change for them, but because you stop changing yourself away from you. Charisma is not something you add. It's something that emerges when nothing inside you is being hidden, suppressed, or overperformed. You don't need to become someone else. You need to come home to who you already are. Here is a simple practice you can use every day. Once a day, choose just one interaction. It can be brief. It doesn't need to be important. What matters is how you show up internally. In that interaction, Allow yourself to stop performing. Notice if you feel the urge to explain yourself too much, and resist it. Notice if you feel the impulse to adjust your tone to be more pleasing, softer, stronger, or more agreeable, and let your voice stay natural. Notice if you feel rushed, as if you need to say the right thing quickly before the moment passes, and slow down. Notice if part of you is monitoring how you're coming across, and gently release that effort. You don't need to do anything special. Just stay present. From a neurological perspective, this is powerful. Your nervous system learns through experience, not through affirmations. Each time you remain present without performing, your system receives a new message. The message is, authenticity is safe. When your body no longer feels threatened by being yourself, it relaxes. Your breathing deepens. Your timing improves. Your emotional signals become clearer. And clarity creates safety, both for you and for others. This is how charisma develops naturally, not through confidence techniques, not through personality changes, but through repeated moments of internal permission. Over time, these small interactions accumulate. Your system stops anticipating rejection. You stop bracing, and people begin to respond differently, not because you're trying, but because your presence feels settled. Safety creates coherence. Coherence creates attraction. You don't need to practice being charismatic. You need to practice being unperformed. And one small interaction a day is enough to begin. Understanding your archetype doesn't limit you. It frees you. It gives language to patterns you've felt your entire life, but may never have been able to explain. Why certain environments energize you while others drain you. Why some relational dynamics feel natural and others feel deeply uncomfortable. Why trying to be confident sometimes feels effortless and other times feels exhausting. Clarity reduces emotional noise. When you understand how your nervous system naturally seeks safety, you stop fighting yourself. You stop forcing behaviors that don't fit. You stop interpreting misalignment as failure. Nothing about you is wrong. You were never meant to express femininity in just one way. You were meant to express it in your way. And when you do, your presence settles. Your emotions become easier to regulate. Your relationships become clearer and more honest. If this video helped you understand yourself more deeply, you are not alone. Feel free to subscribe and continue exploring these topics here. This channel exists to support women who are tired of emotional turmoil, tired of overtrying, and ready for balanced confidence and conscious relationships. Without drama, without labels, and without self-blame. There is nothing you need to transform into, only something you can return to. And it is in this return that calm begins. If you'd like to go deeper into this work, I created a practical guide to emotional self-mastery to support you. It was developed to help you regulate emotions, stop overreacting or oversharing, and build inner stability, step by step, at your own pace. I've left the guide in the pinned comment below. This content is educational and reflective in nature. It does not replace therapy, medical advice, or professional mental health support. If you are experiencing persistent emotional distress, seeking personalized care is an act of strength. Thank you for being here. And thank you for listening to yourself.